Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new episode of The Untold, the show where we bring amazing people talk about their journeys, their experiences, the destination, and their path that led them here on The Untold. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Abdullah AlHendyani.
And I'm your host, Lujain AlAtheri, and today we're joined by Salem AlMathkour, who's both a cinematographer and a teacher and instructor. And I think it's really amazing that he's able to both follow his passions as well as impart it and his wisdom onto the next generation.
Yeah, honestly, cinematography is such a amazing field, right? Because as someone who follows a lot of movies and reads a lot of, movies, I probably read more about movies than I actually watched movies. Cinematography as a profession and as a sector is such a very important role within the movie making industry, within the TV shows and commercials, ads. It's the brand look of the show as a whole. And also, like I said, an instructor on top of that to pass on the knowledge that you have to students, to pass on the future generations who are going to be going into these fields. It's an amazing task, amazing professions in both sides.
As someone who only watches movies, I don't know about the technical aspects so much. It'll be really interesting to hear about someone who has such a deep background in producing things and how cinematography actually works. And I am really curious as well about how he's also a teacher because, a lot of people say if you don't do, then teach, but he somehow is doing both. And I think it's always amazing to share what you know with other people.
It is amazing, and it's going to be an amazing episode. Hopefully, with that being said, we are going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. After the break, we're going to be sit down and joined by him. And we're back on another rendition of The Untold, but of course we're joined again by our esteemed guest who had a lot to discuss, so we decided to bring you out again. So AlMathkour, thank you for being our guest tonight on The Untold.
Thank you for having me again, Abdullah and Lujain.
It's honestly so great to have you again. I feel like we learned a lot discussing your role as a cinematographer and how things work behind the scenes of a movie or a commercial, the production. It was so interesting. But you are also a teacher, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And you teach cinematography?
I teach digital media production and visual communication in a private university in Kuwait.
Amazing. So what led you to do that?
Okay, so basically, when I first joined the university, I was asking about the potential jobs that I can get out of graduating from the media department, emphasized with the emphasis of visual communication. So one professor, Dr. Yasser, he was like, you can do this and that and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Then he said, and you can teach. I was like, yes, I do want to teach. I actually do want to teach. So I worked my way through that until before graduating. I went to the head of department. I was like, Dr. Fahad Smith, he was the head of department back then. I was like, Dr. Fahad, I would love to be part of the faculty of media, mass communication media at university, and would you give me that opportunity? He was like, if we have a vacancy, then we can do that. So basically, he provided me with a job as a student. So I was a student worker working with the department on different things, whether it's from shooting or designing things for the department, or even controlling the screens that we had in the department and so on, along with maintaining the labs that we had. So it was fully functional Mac labs. We had more than 35 Mac devices that we're kind of maintaining for the students to use in classes. And I was leading that lab in terms of the open lab hours, how the students are going to work, where are they going to work, and helping them also with teaching them the technical stuff in the different softwares that they use in their classes.
Yeah. And also going from a student to a teacher, it's a transition that is really big, but it's also within the same factor. So how does your approach to, or your mindset to education and teaching changes once you shift from being a student to a teacher?
So I started as a student, then I shifted to teaching assistant,
Yeah.
not even an instructor yet. So when I moved from like the students aspect to the teaching aspect, I started to understand a bit more of the instructor's mindset, like why they were teaching specific things. Even as a student, I was arguing kind of with some professors like, this is not actually useful. Why are you teaching us this? Then later on, when I actually got into the field, I found out that everything that was being taught is actually on international level. Not only, like a lot of people would say, like the education system in here, it's not the best in the world, blah, 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 etc. But actually, when I went abroad, I found that everything that I've been taught in university as like undergrad was being taught in there as master's student. So actually the teaching was on point. Now, back to that, when I moved also from being a teaching assistant to a lecturer, which is what I am right now, it also helped me to understand, first of all, the students' mentality, then also being able to work with teaching assistants in collaboration with them in order to achieve something to teach these students what the profession is and what are the real world struggles are and how would they operate in the actual field when they graduate. So it was a very insightful journey throughout these 3 different roles at university.
I mean, it's really fascinating seeing how as a student you were like, this doesn't make sense. And then as soon as you kind of reach that other hierarchy, you're like, oh, it all makes sense. The puzzle pieces all fit together. And it's always really amazing to me how, especially when you're young, your mind view is still a bit limited, your perspective. You haven't experienced things yet, so you can only see things as much as you've experienced them.
100%.
And the older you get, the more that you do, especially when you're teaching things, you start to see things in a way that you would never seen them before, especially when you're imparting knowledge to other people, because you are forced to see it also from their perspective as well. And I think that's just really cool that you were able to have that transition and that growth. And I do want to ask, because obviously you've had a lot of time on sets, making movies, working with a lot of different people, working with directors and all that. Did you find that experience helped you becoming a teacher, or is it a completely different case teaching students?
When teaching digital media production, it's a must to have that technical knowledge and like life in set, because everything that I'm teaching is based on experience. I'm not teaching anything from books. And this is what I take pride of, because what I am facing on set on daily basis, I just go the next day, the very next day, I go to class and I'm like, be careful, because if you do this, that will happen. And if that happens, then you can do this and that, because it's always about like problem solving on set. And this is what we are trying to get these students to learn, how to solve these problems, how to fix the image to get the best image ever, how to kind of direct cast to actually get the performance well, and so on. So basically, whatever happens on set, I'm taking that experience, that very experience, to the classes, to the students. Not only that, but I'm also taking a lot of my students to sets. Like the last 2 productions, I was with my students working on sets, giving them the real life experience of how life would be like once they graduate.
I bet they love that though.
They do. Believe me, they do.
Yeah, honestly, hands-on teaching is one of the finest examples of teaching I've ever seen. Like, you mentioned the university. I believe we both went to the same university, and there's this particular professor, Stephen, I think we both know him. His approach to teaching was very hands-on. He didn't like you to just read from the book. He was like, make you stand up, do whatever you're reading instead of, just reading it. And this is now 15 or even 20 years later, I still remember those classes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that hands-on experiences are very helpful. But let's go back to the classroom, because within the classroom, you have so many different, mentalities, so many different creativity within the students. How do you balance all of this? How do you see, the gems within all of them?
So basically, there are different levels to the students. We do have some students who are actually known in the field and they're actually working in the field with a lot of productions. Then we do have people who are just there to pass. They just want to take that class to pass, to fill their major sheet. And there are like people who would love to learn, but they're not on that level yet. So basically what we do is we accommodate to all these kind of students with all these mentalities, with all their needs, to be very specific. So people who are actually on sets and they actually do have the experience, we might give them a bit more extra advanced things, not as assignments, but as extra information for them in class. For those who are willing to learn, we might actually take them and kind of make them collaborate with those students who are actually working on sets, or we take them to sets. And those who are just there to pass, it's only the teaching materials that we provide them with. Like, yeah, but mainly from my experience, even those who do not want to learn, they actually get out of these classes learning something new. Like I've always said in classes, my main point as an instructor in this university is for you to learn something. If you learn one thing from my class, then I've won.
Yeah.
If you get out of the class not knowing anything, then it's my fault. It's not your fault. So basically, we tend to kind of have the scale of how much they learned based on the first time they get into class and the last day of classes. What I tend to do is I give them a quiz, a knowledge quiz, that is just a bonus quiz, testing their knowledge, their existing knowledge of the materials. Then I take the same quiz, I do it at the end of class for me to be able to assess, did they actually learn something out of it? And it's always a win. It's always a win.
Yeah, and honestly, whenever the topic of creativity within the art scene comes along, especially when it relates to, cinematography and movies in general, I always like to bring, Wes Anderson to the mix, because he's a director and he has a very unique look. But if you look at his filmography from the first movies all the way back, you don't see his style from early on. You see it develop across all of his movies.
True.
So he learned, like you said, even though he was creative, he learned the process. He learned how to create his look. He learned how to have that look. When 10, 15 movies after the first one, you can see the look finally develop. So it's a learning process. Like I said, you got to build it upon it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because everyone wants to create something from like level 100.
Yeah.
But they don't want to climb the ladder all the way, which is something that is not making a lot of sense to me, because we do need to start small. Everyone needs to start from the first step, then climb your way all the way to the top. If you don't have the basics, which is the theories, then you will not be able to kind of mix it with practical life. If you have all that practical aspect, but you don't know the theories, then you also are lacking some of the very important essential information that people actually learned before and came up with in order to enhance their visual style and their technique in cinema or like in different kind of projects. So basically it's very crucial to learn these theories.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I was arguing about. Like,
Really?
yeah, theories are not important. Why are we teaching? Why are we teaching these students all these theories? But later on, when I started actually working on the field, I was like, okay, what about doing this and that, because this would give me that?
Yeah.
Then it actually works, because that theory was based on like studies and knowledge of human psychology and so on, which is the main thing that we're trying to do. Filmmaking is all about controlling human psychology, so it actually works.
No, I can see that. And they do always say that there, like as you said, there are some people who they're born naturally gifted, mashallah, it's in them. But there are a lot of people who they don't realize that a lot of it just comes from practice, from having the dedication, the drive to do it every single day. There are some people that you'll see that, let's say artists or actors, anyone, musicians, they'll start in one place. And the reason that they got so good is that they didn't give up. They kept persevering, they kept trying, and eventually they find their own style, they get to a place. And I've heard like this quote that said, "It took me all my life to learn how to draw like a child," by Picasso. And the idea is that in the beginning, he followed all the rules. And after he followed all the rules, he became someone who could then break the rules and create his own vision.
100%.
And a lot of people, I think, aren't aware that you have to learn the basics. The foundation is always everything. Doesn't matter what field you're in. You have to know the foundation in order to be able to get to become, I guess, the name that you are, you could say.
100%.
But how do you deal with students like you who might be arguing about this kind of stuff?
I just tell them to wait until they graduate, then they will understand. No, I actually tell them my journey. I do actually share a lot of my journey because I'm trying to become the instructor that I didn't have back then, if you know what I mean. Being on set is not easy. And if you graduate without an actual experience in university, you are not going to be hired because people are paying money to get these productions done in the right way. So if you don't have that experience, then you're not being hired. And if you're not being hired, then it is going to be a struggle for you to actually learn the things and go and work for free for the first few times, then you get there. So I'm providing my students with that. I am becoming the instructor who I didn't have back then, to be very honest.
Yeah.
Now, what you said earlier about Picasso also reminded me of a musician who said, I practice 7 to 9 hours a day and people are calling me a genius. So basically it takes a lot of practice and effort and passion into what are we doing, because I also played music at some point in my life. I used to practice for like 5 to 6 hours a day, facing the wall, like neglecting anything else in my life during the time of practice, and just practicing for the sake of practice, and it got me somewhere, alhamdulillah. So practice is very important. Learning is very important. Even me as an instructor, I still learn a lot from being on sets or even from my students, which is not ghalat, as we say.
Yeah.
If I see someone doing something that I don't know, I'd go and ask, because why not? Even if I'm the instructor. It's a learning opportunity for both sides. So I learned a lot from my students. They learned a lot from me. I learned a lot from set, and like I pass on that experience on set as a shortcut for my students later on to succeed.
And I think that's the best approach to teaching. We are going to go on a break shortly, but this reminded me of one of my professors when I was continuing my education. He said, you know, this is way early in the semester. He says, we are here, excuse me. He said, we are here so that I can learn from you as much as you can learn from me. And I think, you know, those kind of teachers, those kind of instructors are the ones that stick with you, right?
100%.
Those are the ones who stick out of the bunch. With that being said, we are going to take a very quick break. We'll come right back after this one. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to ask you something, Salem. You know, your role as an instructor, we've gone through before the break. Is that how instructors, the approach to teaching is that they are learning as much from the students as they are teaching them? So I do want to ask you, you know, do you have any memorable experiences with students who are pursuing these kind of endeavors?
Such as like learning?
Yeah, within learning or going to the field, you know, something that made you feel like, oh, wow, I feel really proud to have these classmates, you know, these students as my class.
Oh, 100%. I was yesterday telling my students that I'm proud of them because like of the work that we just released. So I had my students on set with me. As behind the scenes, I had a cinematographer and I had a assistant director and the editor. The most vital crew members were actually students in my classes, like who are currently studying digital media production. And I was just telling them that I was very proud of them because the excellent job that they've done on set. And you can see these these students progressing through the career, one production after another. Like they start with just watching, then they actually take some minor roles, and then they become like assistant directors or even directors themselves, or like editors and so on. So a lot of my students are actually right now in the field. We have a lot of people who graduated and have been working on so much successful productions, such as, if I was going to mention names like Salem, who is a director, an editor, and producer. I've got Walid Mughdad, for example, who is a Steadicam operator, one of the best in Kuwait. And Walid actually, right now, if you see most of the commercials that are in Kuwait, it's was him operating the camera, if not being the director of photography or cinematographer on that specific project. There are some people that I cannot let go of on set right now, which is also Daij Mharib, who is an amazing editor, for example. We have these amazing talents, amazing students who just needed just a tiny bit of guidance to kind of thrive in the field. All of them just needed a tiny push to actually achieve their full potential. And alhamdulillah, we can see that they are on their end game right now.
I mean, I guess it goes back to you saying that you tried to be the teacher that you wished you had as well. So how does it feel being able to see your students actually accomplishing things out in the field?
If there's one word to say, I'm very proud. I'm very proud of what they're becoming, to be honest. Like, this is our gift. Whatever we are giving in classes, we get it by actually seeing them thrive in their lives later on. And this is what we've been trying to do, is basically we're trying to push them to actually provide for their for themselves and for their families later on. So that is the feeling, the overall feeling. We're proud, we're happy that they're doing well. Not only me, I can guarantee that all faculty members in all departments in any kind of university are feeling the same thing.
It is
honestly amazing.
Yeah, it is honestly amazing. And I think this goes back to media in all of its branches. You know, it's such a unique, I would say, field that people who go into it for the love of it, right? Because I remember before I got into media, I was studying law. And then I told my mom, I was like, 50 years from now, I don't see myself as a lawyer. I'm going to go into media. And she was like, yeah, Nate. I was like, no, Mom, I'm serious. This is where I do want to see myself in the future. And I think for a lot of students who go into media, whether they like movies, they like TV shows, or they like commercials, or they like editing, they find themselves there. That's why they thrive in there. And it's honestly thanks to instructors like you who can tell those kind of talents and bring them out of people.
Alhamdulillah, I always say this is fadl min Allah, which is this is a gift from God that we are in our positions right now to pass on knowledge to these students to thrive in their lives and to be able to provide for themselves and for their families later on. But I also like the fact that these students are very passionate about it. And there is a misconception about media, by the way, like you just said, Nate. Basically, the thing is that they always think about media as a mudhi' or as a host, TV host, and that's it. There are so many different roles. And actually, when you understand the core of media and you grasp it well, you can understand that media is soft power. What is soft power is basically you can actually influence people's life with whatever you're kind of giving as a message to people. And also this is part of what we are teaching in our classes. Like, media literacy is all about how we are delivering messages, how to detect like fake news, fake posts, as we say in the social media era, and so on. And how are we delivering messages and how to interpret messaging, how to be aware of what we are kind of receiving in terms of messagings and whatnot. And it's like crazy the amount of messages that we tend to get per day. So it is a soft power that holds a lot of responsibility because of the way you're either delivering your message or even receiving a message.
And speaking of receiving messages, do you think that media literacy, especially today, is really important, especially, with the influx of AI and social media and all the technology?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's scary how AI developed right now.
It's
and
so fast.
we're only at the beginning of it.
I know, that freaks me out, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's only going to get way worse or better, who knows,
100%. But like it's it's like any other tool. It's being used as something that is useful. Some people are misusing it, but mostly in general, a lot of people even actually are afraid of like AI being like AI going to take over our jobs and not done. The most thing that we need to know is that AI learns from human input on the internet. It is reading the whole kind of data and coming up with something similar to what is being there. So if there's no development within ourselves as any profession, if we're talking about music, if we're talking about cinema, if we're talking about arts and so on, AI wouldn't be able to deliver something that is a bit more advanced than what we have right now.
Yeah, and also I do love how you bring the idea that AI is a tool, because even the people who made AI are reluctant to call it AI, right? They call it, I think, LLC, which is a language learning language learning module.
Yeah.
So it's just basically reading stuff and then telling you the gist of it. But
100%.
people misuse it a lot. But in your role as an instructor now, especially during the topic of AI, are you struggling with it in terms of student activity or student outwork? And how do you combat it?
We are not trying to combat it. On the contrary, we are trying to push our students to use AI
Use it for the betterment.
in the useful way, in the right way. A lot of softwares like design softwares and so on rely heavily on AI right now.
Yeah.
When we used to design, or when we used to edit images, photo manipulation and whatnot, it used to take us hours to fix the background, for example, or to remove some blemishes and so on. Retouching was very hectic.
Yeah.
Right now, with the use of AI, I can do whatever I used to do in 1 hour in 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, it's a tool.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It takes 3 minutes to do what we used to do in hours, and spend all that time. But again, it's learning from what we are doing.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of advance in our knowledge, in our output to people, to kind of have better kind of AI materials later on.
I think that's really wonderful advice, and something that applies to all fields and whatever anyone
100%.
does. We can never know everything, as you said, so it's always good to just keep learning, keep the mind fresh, and it helps you motivate yourself for life as well, to enjoy it more.
100%.
With that, I want to thank you for joining us, because it was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I feel like we really got an amazing idea of how teachers can teach their students such things that they love as well.
It is, honestly, and I love the end message of the episodes, to keep learning. For me, myself, when I was 20s, I picked up learning German, and then in my 30s, I picked up learning music. So as long as you keep learning, I think that's my own little hint of trying to stay young, right? Keep learning, you'll never age. I do want to thank you again for being our guest and educating us all about being an instructor.
Thank you so much, Abdullah and Lujain, for hosting me today, and thank you for the crew for having me. I hope that this was a bit useful to
It was more than a bit.
No, it was more than a bit
Thank
useful. I
you.
think we had a great time.
Thank you so
And with
much.
that, keep learning, and we're going to go on a quick break. And we're back from that episode, and honestly, I really enjoyed talking to him. Mashallah, he had so much knowledge. The idea of how cinematography works is not something I really understood before. So to know how it works in production, pre-production, post-production, there are so many layers to it. And honestly, it's really amazing to talk about.
It was honestly so amazing to talk about. We've had so many conversations with Salem, so we have so many different conversations about all kinds of genres, all kinds of things. His approach to cinematography, his style in directing, his approach, and himself as an instructor. It was a lovely conversation we've had. It was a lovely time here at the Untold.
I agree. And I think even his role as a teacher, you can tell that he's an amazing teacher to have. I think that he inspires a lot of love in his students and he's so proud of them. And the fact that he's able to see that his work is not going unfinished, it's being produced into something that other people are also following through with and getting them to inspire to follow their dreams. It's wonderful. And I really love the message that he left us with to always keep learning.
Right. Very well said, Lujain. With that being said, that's it from us, the team of the Untold. And until the next episode, goodbye from now.
Goodbye and see you next time.